Well, thanks, Erin, for agreeing to talk to me here today. It's great. And, I've talked to thousands of constituents in my riding, and one of the themes that comes up over and over again is the idea of the West being forgotten. There's so much focus on Ontario and Quebec. Issues that are important to us in Saskatchewan seem to get lost in the bubble of Ottawa. If you become the Prime Minister, will you forget about the West too?
Absolutely not. In fact, as you know, the first conversation I had with Justin Trudeau after I became Conservative leader, I raised only one issue really on the call, and that was Western alienation. Because when I was in the Conservative cabinet of Mr. Harper, we had a Prime Minister for a decade from Western Canada, there were no national unity issues at all. The country was generally doing well, generally together. That's all changed under Mr. Trudeau, and a lot of it is because of ideological anti-resource, anti-Western policies. So if we reverse that, show Canadians that we're going to respect the economy across the country, we're going to respect the ability for people to get back to work, whether in the energy sector, in agriculture, uranium. We're proud of the jobs Canadians have, and after COVID, we need every cylinder in our economic engine firing. And so as we get people back to work, we'll also heal the unity rift that has been caused by the Trudeau Liberals.
Well, and you've already alluded to the fact that Saskatchewan is a resource-based economy. And so if we start with oil and gas, my colleagues, Rosemary Falk and Robert Kitchen, have spoken extensively about the Liberal plan to essentially eliminate oil and gas from Canada. How does oil and gas fit into your plan to secure the future?
Well, what's interesting and just how out of touch the Liberals are, every barrel of Canadian energy replaced from the global supply will be replaced by a bad actor. There's only two democracies in the world that export energy, Canada and the United States, and we're vastly superior than the United States on everything from environmental mitigation, emission reduction, Indigenous participation and partnerships and revenue sharing in some cases. We have high transparency. You can trust us when we say we're lowering our emissions. So we've got to be proud of the ESG leadership, environmental social governance of our energy sector, work with them to lower intensity, lower emissions. We've seen huge strides. Just today, I learned that Suncor spends $900 million a year through Aboriginal supply chain businesses.
Wow.
So Mr. Trudeau's anti-energy policies have actually hurt Indigenous peoples the most. So I think the more we defend our sector, work with them on everything from climate change to getting our products to market, I think Canadians will realize this is not just a resource in Saskatchewan, Alberta, it's a Canadian resource.
Right. And of course, you can't think of Saskatchewan without thinking of, rolling wheat fields and beautiful blooming yellow canola fields. Many of my colleagues have called on, or spoken about our agriculture sector's need to innovate and continue to grow new markets. The question there is, how important is agriculture to you?
Agriculture is critical. It's critical to our economy in Saskatchewan, in Ontario. It's always been about half of our GDP as a province. It's critical to our exports. The trade markets we opened up in the Conservative government to Europe and to Asia was almost all based on getting beef, grain, oilseeds, pork, all of those great commodities to market. We need to do more secondary processing in Canada as much as possible. We need to build up alternative markets because of friction with China, so that make sure we can reestablish with India in the Indo-Pacific. And I'll tell you, the Liberals have dropped the ball on agriculture probably more than anything. We've seen country of origin labeling coming back with the Americans. We've seen attacks on supply managed sectors. We've seen no coherent focus on lentils, on canola, when countries like India, China, and others are closing down options. So we've got to stand up for our ag exporters, and that's something we have a track record doing and will be a priority for a Conservative government.
Now, many of my colleagues have spoken passionately about firearms. And of course, there we're walking the line between protecting the rights and freedoms of law-abiding, responsible firearms owners compared to properly punishing criminals who use firearms to commit crimes. What's your position on firearms?
Well, this is where I get most upset about Justin Trudeau and Bill Blair, sadly a former police chief, lying to Canadians. And I don't throw that word around a lot, but they're lying to Canadians. When they talk about military assault rifles, there are no military assault rifles available in Canada. I was in the military. I know. We actually know that people that have a PAL, a license, have been screened, have been trained. Some of the most responsible law-abiding Canadians there are, they often grew up hunting or sport shooting with a grandfather or father. So why do you target Liberal government, these law-abiding Canadians all the time, and ignore the illegal smuggling of firearms across the border? And they even use tragedies in Nova Scotia and other places to advance a misleading agenda. That tragedy was perpetrated by a known public safety threat who had illegally obtained firearms. So let's close up the loopholes on the border. Let's work with law enforcement, and let's stop demonizing people. I think it divides Canadians. It divides urban versus rural. So this is something I think as a suburban Toronto MP, Brad,
Yeah.
I can push back against the Liberals misleading Canadians and focus on actually dealing with the criminal element.
Family is a very important value in Saskatchewan. And whether you've been in Saskatchewan for many years or if you're a newcomer, and I've spoken to many newcomers, and newcomers and longtime Saskatchewanians all share this value of family. And I was especially pleased when Stephen Harper opened the Office of Religious Freedoms. How will family values factor into an O'Toole government?
Well, I run into people proud of their Saskatchewan roots on calls in Alberta and BC all the time.
We're everywhere.
There's a lot of Rider fans all over the place. Look, we are a party that values family, supporting those that are vulnerable, that are at risk. And we've also said our democracy means there's a role for people to bring their faith perspectives, their cultural perspectives, their personal perspectives to public life. I got to Ottawa as a military veteran. I started talking about my military service and the need to serve our veterans. I think people that want to advocate for religious freedom, like we did when we had the Office of Religious Freedoms, they want to advocate for more options for families with daycare needs, not just an Ottawa knows best solution. I think we're a party that tries to make sure that all parts of the country, all families, all perspectives are represented, and we have a big blue tent. I want to make sure we grow the tent.
So lastly, one other sort of big issue that comes up as I talk to people in my riding, it's a bit of frustration with our democratic system. In Saskatchewan, before our results are even counted in an election, oftentimes we've seen the results come from Ontario and Quebec, and often we know who the Prime Minister is going to be, which leads people to say, why bother voting? So what would you say to somebody who says, there's no point in voting in Saskatchewan, Ontario and Quebec have already made the decision?
Because just a few days ago, we celebrated the anniversary of D-Day, and people died for that right to vote. So don't think your vote does not matter. And we all know MPs that have won narrow elections where literally every vote mattered. And for the Conservatives, we need to hold every seat we have now, every MP. Brad, you were a great pickup. Every seat matters, and we have to win more. So I want to make sure we not only represent and keep our strong Saskatchewan caucus, our strong Alberta caucus, we need to grow in BC and Ontario and Atlantic and Quebec based on a platform that gets this country working and secures our future. So regardless of what time or when results come in, we need every vote in Saskatoon, in Bowmanville, in Chicoutimi. Every vote matters, and it's our democratic duty to make sure that we vote. And gosh, I want to make sure we vote out Justin Trudeau, so I hope you do too.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate so much the chance to chat, and very much looking forward to voting out Justin Trudeau. It's going to be exciting. So all the best as you do your campaigning. We're going to work hard in Saskatoon-West too. So thanks for your time today.
Well, thanks for your work, Brad. The work you're doing growing our tent, engaging more people in our Conservative mission. We need more people to vote out using that democratic power, a tired, incompetent, corrupt Liberal government. And I look forward to establishing a principled Conservative government to get this country back on track.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.